The day I almost lost my family's land was the day I discovered I owned the entire valley. Linda Whitmore called Theckups on my illegal cabin at 700A.M. Police sirens cut through the morning. Mist smoke from my chimney mixing with diesel exhaust. She had no idea that I didn't just own the land, I owned her mortgage, her husband's business, leasing. The road she drove in on 3 months of escalating harassment noise complaints when I was dead-ass sleep structure violations on a cabin that existed. Before she was born, threatening letters demanding $500 a day. Fines. Randon fought the fines on her, but Linda had no clue what she'd started by the time I was done. She'd be facing courthouse steps, news cameras, and a truth that would wipe that smug Smillerite off her Botoxed face. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment with your location. I want to know if HOA Karens are this bad everywhere. Let me take you back to where this all started. My grandfather bought 400 acres in Montana's Clearwater Valley back in 1963 for $800,800. That's what a decent dinner costs. Now he got timber rights, mineral rights, water rights, the whole enchilada. Smart old coot knew what he was doing. I inherited this land when I was 28, right after my parents died in a car accident. Spent every summer here as a kid learning carpentry from Grandpa, building this A-frame cabin with my own hands. 200 square ft of pure independent Slayer panels. Well water composting toilet, completely off-grid and legal in every single way after burning out in corporate software consulting. I chose the simple life work, remote breath, clean air, no traffic jams or office politics, just me, the mountains, and the sound of wind through pine trees. Buckgentrification was creeping up the valley like a slow Mixian avalanche. California money, buying up plots, building McMansions that looked like they belonged in Beverly Hills, not Big Sky Country. The newest eyesore was Clearwater Estates, 32 luxury homes, ranging from $800,000 to $2 million, managed by Whitmore Properties. Enter Linda Whitmore. Picture this, 52 years old, bleach blonde hair sprayed into a helmet, driving a white Escalation that probably cost more than most people's houses. She was HOA president and the real estate developer, which should have been the first red flag. Her motivation was crystal clear. She wanted my land for phase 2 expansion with my property. She could triple the value of her existing lots. Her first move was subtle. A certified letter claiming my cabinulated neighborhood standards and demanding $500 per day in fines. Thelator came on paper so smooth and expensive it felt like silk between my fingers, a stark contrast to the Honestro Hunide logs of my cabin walls. When she showed up at my door for the first inspection, I'll never forget the sound of her stiletto heels clicking on my wooden porch boards. Like a woodpecker with anger, issues. Her perfume was so overwhelming it mixed with the pine sap scent and made my eyes water. She stood there with her pristine manicure, looking at my workless hands like it was something she'd scrape off her shoe. This structure is completely inappropriate for our community standards, she announced, waving a manicured finger at my cabin. Ma'am, I said, keeping my voice level, this cabin was built in 1995. Your community didn't exist until 2018. Her research must have confirmed what I already knew. My land wasn't technically part of her HOA. Grandpa's deed predated her development 40 years. So Linda pivoted strategies. If she couldn't use HOA rules, she'd find an violation to force a sale. Building codes, health department, fire marshal. She was going to throw everything at Muntal. Something stuck, the smell of her cigarettes from her idling Escalade mixed with a pine-scented mountain breeze as she stood on my porch plotting my downfall. She had no idea that every threat, every complaint, every legal maneuver was just digging her hole deeper. You can't fight progress, she said with that fake smile real estate agents perfect in the mirror. This valley is going to be developed whether you like it or not. I watched her drive away, her white Escalade kicking up dust on the gravel road my grandfather had built with His own hands, the sound of her engine faded into the distance, replaced asterisk by the whisper of wind through pine needles and the distant call of a hawk circling overhead. What Linda didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know, was that she'd just declared war on the wrong family. Grandpa hadn't just bought land, had bought power, and was about to learn exactly how much power that was. Linda's first real shot across the bow came 2 weeks later, an anonymous tip to the county inspector about an unpermitted structure. I had to laugh. She wasn't even trying to be subtle anymore. Inspector Jake Morrison showed up on a Tuesday morning, apologetic but professional, good old boy with calloused hands and work boots that had seen actual work. Sorry about this. Son, got a complaint, have to check it out. You know how it is, no problem. Jake come in and we walked through every inch of my cabin. Jake's flashlight beam, Danzadacris, hand-fitted joints, proper electrical work, structural supports that could probably survive a tornado. He see bros kept climbing higher as we went. Son, this place is built better than most houses in town. Who did the work? My grandfather and I. Took us 3 summers. Jake pulled out the original building permits from 1995, signed and stamped by his predecessor. Everything legal, everything documented, everything done right. Whoever called this in was either blend or lying, he muttered, making notes on his clipboard. But Linda wasn't. Donna's smell of her cigarettes lingered in the mountaineer the next morning when I found her business card tucked under my windshield wiper. On the back she'd written, State Environmental Agency complained, filed a legal sewage disposal. Done. It was escalating to state level, trying to overwhelm me with bureaucracy. Time for my counterpunch. I called my college buddy Marcus, who traded his environmental science degree for a law degree and now specialized in exactly this kind of harassment. Bring in a professional septic inspector. Headvise document everything, and I mean everything. The septic inspection happened at 6 a.m. sharp. The rumble of the pump truck echoing across the valley probably woke every neighbor within 5 miles, but it was worth it. Professional analysis proved my system was cleaner than most municipal plants. The inspector, a weathered guy named Bob, who'd been doing this for 30 years, whistled appreciatively. Son, I've seen million-dollar homes with systems half as good as yours. Whoever complained about this doesn't know a boutique. You'll pardon the expression, but here's where it got interesting. Bob mentioned something that made my morning coffee taste a whole lot better. Funny thing is, we got another call this week about gray water discharge into Clearwater Creek. Traced it back to that new development up the road, Whitmore Properties, I think, while Linda Wasu tacking my perfectly legal septic system. Her own development was dumping contaminated water into the creek. The asterisk irony was so thick you could cut it with a chainsaw. Linda's harassment campaign had just exposed her own environmental violations. Marcus nearly choked on his coffee when I called him with the news. Here's something most people don't know: if your septic system was installed before 1990, you're grandfathered in under most state regulations. Marcus explained. Linda was about to learn that lesson the hard way. Jake Morrison stopped by later that week, ostensibly totaliver. The official inspection report, clean bill of health system, exceeds all requirements, but he lingered on my porch, sipping a cup of coffee and sharing what was really on his mind. 23 years I've been doing this job, he said, Thepi nescented breeze, carrying his words across the valley scene. Lot of developers come and go, but I've never seen someone file this many bogus complaints in such a short time. You're the 3rd property owner she's targeted this month. That's when I realized this wasn't just about my cabin. This was about keeping corporate greed from destroying the last wild place my family had protected. Linda wasn't just trying to steal my land. She was trying to erase everything my grandfather had built. The sound of chainsaws echoed across the valley as I cut deadfall for winter firewood. A deliberate show of defiance. Swing of the axe felt like a promise to Grandpa that I wouldn't let his legacy be turned into another strip mall. But this was just round 1. Linda's environmental complaint had backfired spectacularly. But I could already see her white Escalade parked at various county offices around town. She was planning her next move, and I had a feeling it was going to be bigger than building codes and septic systems. The evening air carried the scent of sawdust. Engine oil from my work mixed with the eternal smell of pine trees and mountain air. Somewhere in town, Linda was probably on the phone with lawyers planning her next assault. What she didn't know was that every attack just gave me more evidence of cute. I was starting to build a case that would make her previewshams look like amateur hour. Linda's next salvo came through the fire. Marshall Laprentley, my dangerous wood stove installation, was now a threat to public safety. The woman had more angles than a geometry textbook. Fire Marshal Betty Chen arrived with a full inspection team, clipboards ready, looking like they were expecting to find a meth lab instead of a wood stove. Betty was all business, former military, by the look of her posture, and not easily impressed by anyone's "show me what you've got," she said. Simply what I had was showcase quality work, copper pipes gleaming like new pennies, proper clearances that exceeded code by 6 in top-grade materials that cost more than Linda probably spent on her monthly Botox. Betty's team photographed everything, measured clearances, tested airflow. Mind if we use these photos for training materials? Betty asked. This is textbook installation, better than most professional jobs I see. But Linda wasn't done escalating. She'd filed a complaint with the State Department of Natural Resources claiming I was running a commercial timber harvesting operation with that permits. The absurdity would have been hilarious if it wasn't so malicious. Cut deadfall for personal firewood. Completely legal, like picking up sticks in your backyard. DNR agent Tom Rodriguez had to drive 2 hours from Helena just to explain to Linda that landowners can manage their own forests. Ma'am, this is the 5th time you've called this month, Tom confided during his inspection. He was clearly annoyed, his patience wearing thinner than tissue paper. Mr. Nay Johnson here is within his rights. In fact, removing deadfall actually improves forest health, while Linda was wasting state resources on bogus complaints. I started digging into her business practices. What I found made my morning coffee taste like Victory Whitmore Properties LLC had some interesting financial arrangements. Linda was claiming development consultation fees from buyers, while never mentioning her dual role as HOA president. Classic conflict of interest, potentially fraudulent. She was double-dipping, getting paid to sell lots and then getting paid again to consult on development restrictions. Most people don't realize that HOA board members shave to disclose financial interests in any deals involving the community, my lawyer friend Marcus explained when I called him with my findings. Linda was about to learn why those rules exist. That's when the community started rallying around me. Old Pete, a retired logger who lived downstream, confirmed that Linda had been pressuring him to sell, offered me half what my land's worth, then threatened eminent domain. Go. I said no, he growled, his weathered hands clenched around a coffee mug at Maria's diner. Maria Cusos, who owned the local diner and had fed 3 generations of Valley residents, shared her own Linda horror stories. The bitter taste of her strong coffee matched the bitter taste Linda was leaving in everyone's mouth. She's been spreading grammars about health code violations at my place, 30 years in business. Never had a single complaint until she showed up. David Kim was the real surprise new resident who'd bought into Linda's development thinking he was getting a deal. Turns out he'd been overcharged by $50. Zero for his lot with Linda Pocktenth. Difference through her consultation fees. The sound of my chainsaw echoing across the valley became a daily ritual. Cutting firewood with deliberate defiance, each log split with a satisfying crack that seemed to announce me intentions to the whole valley. The scent of sawdust mixed with engine oil in old Pete's workshop, where we started planning our response. You know what really gets me? Pete said, running his thumb along the edge of a well-worn axe blade. She comes in here from California with her fancy car and fake smile, thinking she can push around families who've been here for generations. Maria nodded. wiping down the counter with thickened of precision that comes from decades of practice. My grandfather built this diner in 1952, fed loggers, ranchers, people who worked with their hands. Now she wants to turn this whole valley into some kind of theme park for rich people. But Linda's harassment campaign was far from over. I could see her white Escalade parked outside the county courthouse most afternoons, no doubt cooking up her next scheme. The woman had more persistence than a telemarketer and twice the moral flexibility. What she didn't realize was that every government agency she called, every false complaint she filed, every threat she made was creating a paper trail that would eventually bury her. I was documenting, cogitating, building a case that would make her previous harassment look like a friendly suggestion. The evening air carried the scent of wood smoke from my chimney, mixing with the eternal pine fragrance of the mountains. Somewhere in town, Linda was probably plotting her next move, but now I had allies, evidence on a growing understanding that this fight was about more than just my cabin. This was about stopping a pattern of abuse that had been going on long enough. Linda's harassment campaign reached a new level of desperation over the next month. Daily wellness checks from the sheriff's department became my new normal. Bogus noise complaints when Micah Bean was dead silent. She even called Child Protective Services, claiming my unfit living conditions were endangering children, despite the fact that I lived alone and the nearest kid was 5 miles away. The breaking point came at 11 p.m. A Tuesday. Deputy Johnson's cruiser came rumbling up my gravel driveway, redanned blue lights cutting through the darkness like angry fireflies. The crunch of his boots on frost-covered ground announced another bogus call. Domestic disturbance report. He said, clearly embarrassed, "Sorry, but I have to check." I stood there in my pajamas and bare feet, cabin dark behind me, no other soul within miles. "Deputy, do I look like I'm disturbing anyone but myself right now?" He sighed, making notes he probably wouldn't file. "I'm getting 2 to 3 calls per week, all from the same number between you and me. This is harassment, plain and simple." Linda escalated to the legal system, filing for an emergency injunction, claiming my threatening behavior at an HOA meeting I never attended. Small claims court on a Thursday morning. Linda arrived with an expensive lawyer in a suit that probably cost more than my truck. I represented myself with a manila folder, and the truth, the judge, a nonsense woman named Patricia Wells, looked about as impressed with Linda's theatrics as I was. "Your hand." Linda's lawyer began. My client fears for her safety due to Mr. Johnson's increasingly erratic behavior. I stood up, pulled out my phone, and projected security camera footage onto the courtroom wall, date and timestamps, clearly showing I wasn't anywhere near the supposed meeting where I had allegedly threatened her. Judge Wells does miss the case in under 5 minutes. "Miss Whitmore, I'm warning you about filing frivolous complaints. This court has better things to do. Time to bring in professional help." I hired private investigator Sarah Chen, no relation, tough fire marshal, but equally no nonsense. What she found made Linda's harassment look like amateur hour. "Your Linda has a pattern," Sarah reported over coffee at Maria's diner. The piece findings were spread across the worn wooden table like evidence in a murder case. "She's done this exact thing in 3 other communities. It always targets landowners adjacent to potential developments." The pattern was crystal clear. Linda had been sued twice for HOA board conflicts of interest. Her real estate license was suspended in California for undisclosed dual representation. Most damning of all, she owed $180,000 in back taxes on her Montana purchasers, a tip for anyone dealing with HOA harassment. Document everything with timestamps, Sarah advised, tapping her pen on a thick folder of evidence. Those cords become crucial evidence when you need to prove a pattern of abuse. The community was rallying like I'd never seen. Old Pete revealed that Linda had tried to buy his land for half market value, threatening eminent domain. When hair fused, Linda told me the government would take it anyway if I didn't sell to her pure intimidation. Maria shared that Linda had been spreading rumors about health code violations at the diner, trying to pressure her into selling the building. 30 years feeding this community, and she wants to turn my place into a Starbucks. David Kim discovered he'd paid $50,000 over market rate for his lot with Linda, pocketing the difference through hidden fees. She called them premium location adjustments. I called them theft. The sound of gravel crunching under tires became Linda's calling card every time another sheriff's cruiser rolled up for another bogus call. I'd document the time, take photos, record conversations. My evidence folder was getting thicker than a phone book. Linda's smug expression in the courthouse hallway after her valid injunction attempt was captured perfectly on the security cameras. That look of entitled confidence would be wiped away soon enough. I found myself leaning against the rough bark of the old pine tree behind my cabin during strategy calls, the texture grounding me while I planned my next moves. The tree had weathered storms for decades, just like my family's hold on this land would weather Linda's assault. But Linda wasn't done. Her financial desperation was making her bolder, more reckless. The woman was doubling down on a losing hand, and I could practically smell the fierce sweat through her expensive perfume. During our chance encounters at the post office, what she didn't know was that every escalation, every false complaint, every desperate legal maneuver was just adding evidence to a case that would eventually destroy her. I was playing the long game, and Linda was too panicked to see the trap closing around her. The evening air carried the scent of pine needles and wood smoke, peaceful sounds of wind through the trees replacing the chaos of Linda's harassment. But I knew this was just a calm before the storm, because I was about to discover something that would change everything. The game-changing discovery came while I was researching county records for my defense against Linda's latest bogus lawsuit. Sometimes the universe has a sense of humor. I was looking for ammunition to defend myself and instead found a nuclear weapon buried in the maze of county filing systems. I stumbled across something massive. Linda's development company had taken out a $300,000 construction loan in 2019. Standard stuff for a developer, but the collateral wasn't just her own land. It was a complex web that included future development rights across the entire valley. That's when I started digging deeper. My grandfather hadn't just owned Anita's 2,400 acres. The old records revealed something that made my coffee cup freeze halfway to my lips. He owned the mineral rights under most of the valley, including Linda's entire development. But that wasn't the shocking part. The shocking part was what else I found. Grandpa held first mortgage position on 3 key properties that Linda had been using as leverage for her construction loan, properties she claimed to own free and clear when applying for financing. How had this been hidden for so long? Grandpa's estate was complex, managed by an old-school attorney who died in 2018. The new estate lawyer had never fully explained the scope of my inheritance. County records were scattered across multiple filing systems, some dating back to territorial days, filed under different naming conventions. I spent 14 hours in the county records office, my eyes burning from reading microfilm and faded documents, but what I discovered was worth every minute of eye strain. Grandpa's 1963 purchase included all rights, heir tenances, and future development considerations. Legal language from the 1960 stat gave me veto power over any development affecting the watershed. The leverage bomb was incredible. Linda's entire development was built on land where I controlled mineral and water rights. Her construction loan was in default. She'd missed 2 payments during her harassment campaign against me. The bank was getting nervous about her ability to complete phase 2, which required my land to be financially viable. When I finally reached the state lawyer, grandson of Grandpa's original attorney, he confirmed my reading of the documents. Your grandfather was smarter than most people realized, he said over the phone.